powered by Riverside FM.
Patanjali Yog Darshan Samadhi Padam Atha Yoga Anushasanam Yogaschitta Vritti Nirodha. What I love about Patanjali is that he is a guide. You know, the teachings, like sometimes it's been said that Patanjali is a dualistic scripture. No, it's a scripture of a realized being who speaks to would-be realized being. So he's not ignoring their reality. He says, my dear one, you suffer. Okay, what can we do for that? Here are the solution. And when that happens, what do I do then? Okay, but how long is it going to take me, Guruji, to reach that state? You know, all those unspoken questions are behind the text of Patanjali.
Welcome to a Curious Yogi podcast. I'm your host, Bobby, joined by living masters and awakening friends. We're here to illuminate your practice as we explore what it means to walk the yogi's path, unfold peace from within, and live the vision of oneness. I'm so delighted you're here. Now let's get curious. Welcome back. We're jumping right into season 4, and I've got an incredible lineup of guests coming up in the next few months. I'm so excited. From authors to teachers to living masters like today's special guest. And before I introduce you to the very special guest, I just want to make an announcement. Starting May 18th, my Living Yoga Sadhana 6-week immersion course begins. It's available all online. It's 2 Sundays, 5 Thursdays to apply the yogic techniques and philosophy to our everyday life to find more equanimity, more settledness, which I created this course simply because it was something I desired for myself and I couldn't find it anywhere. So if you're interested in meeting weekly for 6 weeks and getting some support and community for your daily sadhana, join us May 18th. I'm starting. I'll drop the link to join in the show notes. I'm going to jump right into it because I know Patanjali is an ongoing inquiry, especially for yoga teachers who often leave their 200-hour training more confused about who and what Patanjali is for. Well, I promise you, everything gets cleared up in this episode today with Deep Priya, a yogini who has been teaching Patanjali since 1986. Like, that's 39 years. So she's a real master. Deep Priya's unfoldment in the field of yoga includes 45 years of studying, practicing, and teaching the inner as well as the outer aspect of the yoga tradition, including meditation, sacred chanting, the study of knowledge through the great scriptures of yoga, particularly Patanjali, in the light of the teachings of Swami Sham and Satsang. In this enlightening conversation, Deep Priya shares her profound journey through yoga, dance, and meditation, exploring the interconnectedness of these practices. She discusses the importance of somatics in understanding the body and its emotional ties, as well as her deep connection to Patanjali's teachings. The conversation delves into the essence of the witness self, the nature of the mind, and the path of liberation through meditation and self-awareness. She emphasizes the importance of being present in the moment, understanding the nature of thoughts, and the journey towards achieving peace through meditation. This discussion delves into the differences between samadhi and kevalya, the significance of Patanjali's wisdom in modern life. Hello, everybody. And the transformative power of meditation in accessing deeper states of consciousness. Deep Priya recorded the Yoga Sutras in Sanskrit, which you heard briefly in the intro, and we'll hear again throughout the episode. and made available in bonus material for Patreon members, all 4 pods. She published a booklet as well, the Intemporal Sutras in their unaltered simplicity, to sing and study them. Deep said the path of knowledge being the least understood and the least practiced of the paths of the yogic tradition, she feels it is important for her to share it with the very special and rare being who feel in resonance with this path. I also want to mention that Deep Priya is the founder of Soma Yoga, an innovative technique that fuses the ancient art of Hatha Yoga with somatic education and the experience of self-adjustment of the spine. This is super cool. She has been training hundreds of teachers in that discipline. So there's so much here. And I also want to note, thanks to the incredible Patreon community, I'm able to share this podcast in video format on YouTube and increase the sound quality by upgrading my recording and editing software. You have no idea how big this is for me. What do you think? Can you hear and see the improvement? I'd love to hear your comments. And listen, if you haven't already subscribed as a Patreon member, please go ahead. And even if you can only join the free membership, you still receive updates about the podcast. We had our first Sunday satsang back after the break last week, and it was so inspiring. It's such an incredible group of yogis that we just discuss and meditate and study with. And this is so exciting too. I'm really excited to share that starting in June, I'll be offering a second live session for Patreon members, and this is going to be super special. On the second Tuesday, try to remember that, of every month, I'll be recording a live episode with a fellow satsangi and previous guest from the pod. You can join live, ask questions, and just be a part of our casual conversations about life and sadhana. And these episodes are going to be titled Good Company, as I had briefly done in season 1, because that's what we're here for, right? And on that note, here is Deep Priya on Patanjali meditation and the rare and profound path of knowledge. Enjoy, yogis. Great. So welcome so much, Deep Priya, to a Curious Yogi podcast. It's so wonderful just to get to spend an hour with you. I feel super excited and lucky.
Oh, I'm the one that's lucky, sweetie. It's a pleasure.
So I feel the listeners are really going to enjoy this conversation, because when I think of you, I think really a living yogini, a living practitioner, someone that has devoted your life to the study and the practice and the embodiment of yoga. And I would love if you would just start by, I know it's hard to probably encompass 45, 50 years of spiritual practice, but I always find it interesting to see the threads, in each spiritual seeker. Is it something that you felt you had always an inclination to that as a young person, or what sort of brought you into living your life in this devoted and very profound way?
Yeah, it is, first of all, I would say for me, it has been a joy. That's the most important thing. A joy with a lot of alignment, sometimes meeting obstacles within myself, whether on the body level, on the mind level, on the emotions levels, but with incredible tools to deepen my life and my practice, because to me, it's not separate. And what I found is that, when I was 18 or so, I decided I will do a work that is also my life. Because we work too much hours in a week, in a month, in a life. So this is why I became a teacher. And my first interest was dance, and dance I loved. Because, you're just there with your body. So many times I was practicing alone, like, of course, taking classes or also preparing for rehearsal and things. But you spend a lot of time alone in an empty room with your body. And when you work on the choreography, sometimes your body finds its way very easily. Sometimes you have to just take your time and absorb it and discover it. And in yoga, we will call practices having to do with the body the outer practices. They are outer in a way, but for me, what has been so fascinating with dance and yoga, same thing, is to be authentic in my dance, I had to be seated deep within myself, not into that space. Look at me, how many turns I can do, how high I can jump, which is a joy too, kids will enjoy that. But there is a deeper sense where you're so absorbed in what you're doing that what is shared with others is your inner space. In traditional dance in India, it's considered there is no audience. It's just one space. Now, the one performing, the one watching the performance are the same being. So when we tune into that as a performer, the place that we reach within ourselves is much deeper than the sense of ego. And the joy that is found there, it's a validation, which is a profound space of delight, of joy. I mean, not delight as a peak, but delight, anand, as a basis for the practice. There is nowhere else to go but within that. So when we talk, so if I talk about my life, dance was my first practice, and it eventually took me to yoga. And, I remember when I was, it's so funny the things you remember of your life. But I had an older sister, two older sisters. One was 12 years older than me. And one day, her and me and my little brother, we were sitting in the grass in the field. We were having a picnic, and she showed us a couple of stretches. And I completely loved it. And I remember my sister saying to me, don't force, because you watch as a kid, you watch somebody do something, so you want to do the same. But you have to do the same, translated in your own body, in your own nervous system, in your own breath. So she said, go slowly. And, after that, I had my own little practice. I lived in a place where yoga was completely unheard of, near Grenoble in France. So, but I found that when I did that, I thought it was so miraculous. I would just stay and my body would relax. And that was so wonderful. And there was no sense of having to do it right. Doing it like that was doing it right. Because though it was an outer action in my body, it brought me to a place inside of me, again, of discovery, not expecting anything from my body, just discovering. And what we discover when we release the fascia, when we release the breath, when we go past all the little things that are going on in the body, because, there too, the body is influenced by the soma, and the soma, like whatever we experience in the body, as an emotional being, as an intelligent being, as an aware being, whatever, it translates. And even at a young age, there is already stress in the body. There is already little shoulders like that. There is already little tension in the hands. There is little pain in the belly, like all these things that can be worked out. And when you allow the body to just let them go, you go inside. I mean, it is generally not called as being inside, but it really is being inside. And I would say as a performer, the more you go inside, the more you take people into a very rich dimension where they are you, you are them, and we spend a wonderful, magical moment. Because when we inhabit the moment, they're magical. So that was it. And then, I discovered yoga, and I really, really liked the discipline of it. I liked, as opposed to dance, it's very still. Not all of yoga is still, but the stillness, I loved practicing the stillness. And then, when I was 20, I began to meditate also. And for me, the first time I meditated, I said to myself, the most important thing of your life has happened. What are you going to do with that? Because what happened is that, I sat as a person with my preoccupation, my life, my story. I sat at one point, fed up sitting. And I kept sitting. And at one point, I was fed up with sitting. I must say that where I learned to meditate, they meditated 3 hours. Can you believe someone who's never meditated? And I can sit in lotus, but inside I was moving. But, after a while, time stopped, place stopped, being stopped. And it's not so much what stopped, what's important, because I was not asleep. And a profound, profound sense of peace was there. A profound joy, a causeless joy. I was not happy because I succeeded in something or whatever. So that was, the direction where I looked at. Oh.
Beautiful. I love that you, I came to asana practice through dance as well. I have scoliosis. So my dance professor, she said, go to yoga. And I remember also the meditation at the end and the shavasana at the end, how, like you so beautifully described that space of causeless joy, which even then I didn't have the language for it, but it's so beautiful the way that you're expressing. And you mentioned something about soma, and I know the type of yoga that you created, that you've taught hundreds of teachers, this soma yoga. I'm sure it sort of blends all of this wisdom that you have together, but can you just shed a little light about that soma space that you're speaking about?
Yes. Well, naturally, I was very much in love with movement. I'm someone, I've always moved, And so that was that. And then I discovered yoga. And then at one point, I was actually in Kulu at that time in India. And I had a long meditation. And when I woke up, my neck was completely stuck. You know what it's like? You're in agony. And it's 3 a.m. What can I do? I cannot lie down. I cannot. So I went home and someone had lent me the book called Somatics from Thomasana, which is a remarkable book. And I thought, maybe it will help me. I didn't know what to do. So, and I opened the chapter on the neck. And movement, I understand. So I read the exercise, I did the exercise. 15 minutes later, no more pain in my neck. I went, this should not happen. I had no knowledge that this could happen. What I did is that using these contrasted exercises where you engage and release, I actually released the spasm. Let's say there is a spasm in my hand, okay? This is easier to understand with a hand. And the spasm make my hand stay like that. I cannot open my fingers. My hand staying like that. So normally, what I will try to do is to force it open. This is how you would think that you should do it. In somatic, you do the opposite. You clench it more. Because then your brain knows that you're tightening. When it's there and it's involuntary, the brain doesn't know. So you cannot release it. So this is how we work. And I found it unbelievable on my body. I had a dance injury in particular, I had a couple, but this one ripped my hamstring doing the split once in a cold room. And after that, whenever I did a kick, it will spasm. And when I worked with the somatic exercise, all this went away. It's a rewiring of what is called the soma, The soma is the inner feeling, how you feel inside your body. And it's a retraining of the limbic brain. It's very complementary to yoga. I call it the missing link. That's the one thing I wish I could have studied from day one, because it's so useful. I've seen it help dancers. I've seen it help hatha yogis, because all those involuntary tension that we take on, let's say I'm in a hurry. It doesn't help me to lift my shoulders, but my body might do it because of stress. As soon as I realize my shoulders are lifted, I can drop them. But in my brain at that time, I don't know I'm lifting them. It's just one part of the body, not to mention the belly, to mention the mouth, the jaws. So all these things in somatic and Thomasana was wonderful, because he actually published the exercises that were developed by Feldenkrais. And he taught, and he had an intuition, a very deep intuition, that he would not live long, that it was very important that he did all of that before he died. And he did. I mean, if you can study with a teacher, it's always better. But when you are miles away from a teacher like I studied from his book, from his tapes, and there are videos also on the webs, and it's marvelous. It really, really is. I was really pleased to find that, because for me, my goal was rapidly just to be easy in my body, and especially easy in my body when I sit. There's no pain. No pain is a wonderful thing. It's just, it's a great, great thing. And pain can come from these postures. First, the stress, is postural, and then it can become structural when it's held too long. So it's a way to inhabit your body. And when it came, it was so useful to me and to so many of my friends. I was really, really loving the somatic. And also I used other approaches like the Mackenzie technique, because in Mackenzie you learn how to adjust yourself, to self-adjust your disc. It's, like whenever I need to see a therapist, I'm going to do 90% of the work before I go. They're going to do whatever I cannot do to myself. But it's so helpful. So that was it. Yeah.
I think you made such a interesting but important and subtle distinction there of like, why do we do the physical practices? And you said it so rightly, to feel easy in the body when we sit. And I think that's such an important distinction today for modern postural yoga practitioners who through however yoga's been shared in the Western world, yes, and sort of come so far from the source that the postures are the practice in themselves. But actually, I know that you've studied Patanjali for your whole life, pretty much. It's your scripture. And, I was saying to you before we started recording that the Yoga Sutras are a scripture that's introduced to yoga teachers in all over the world in a very small, limited way to teach physical postures, which is ironic because there's only, I think, maybe one sutra that actually says and describes the asana. So I think it's so beautiful that you found this way, this somatic way of releasing the stress in your body, which we could say is a type of, like you said before, the physical practice of yoga. But it's like, what are we really attracted to? Why are me and you sitting here in this conversation? Because we're actually attracted to that space, which is the inner yoga. So I would love if you could just touch on how you came to Patanjali and what the inspiration has been to really become a master in that scripture, which is so misunderstood. And yeah.
There are certain books in our lives. They're like, almost like people in our life. They are like a presence in our life. I remember once I was going through, a steep moment in my sadhana, in my practice. A moment where I was facing all kind of limitations, and I was seeing them. And it was very intense. And I was working on it, and it was my time to do that, because we can only work on what appears at the surface, on the body or on the mind. And I remember that one night I fell asleep, and in my dream, the sound came, drid boom mihi, drid boom mihi, and it was like a heartbeat. And drid boom mihi in Sanskrit means a firm ground.
Satu dirghakala nairantarya satikara sevito drid bhumi.
Satikara sevito drid bhumi. Satu dirghakala nairantarya satikara sevito drid bhumi. And then in my dream, the sutra was coming. I had never learned that sutra by heart. I knew it, but I had never learned by heart. Sutra 14 from the first pad. And when I woke up, I was just like, the sutra was repeating itself. And then I looked it up, what it meant, And what sutra means is that there is an aspect in our transformation that is effortless. And there is an aspect to get to the effortless where we have to have an intent to practice. So that's where the effort is. And what this sutra says is that the practice has to be continued for a long time without interruption to become a firm ground. And the very, very cute thing is that a friend of mine told me that she was in a Patanjali study group and would I like to join, and that's the kind of thing I always say yes. So this was new for me. That week I arrive, a little late I enter the room and they're singing Satu dirghakala nairantarya satikara sevito drid bhumi. This is an example of how the sutras, they're like a thread. And sometimes a sutra is more important. Like this sutra was telling me, just breathe, just go the course. Don't freak out. Just one step at a time. Don't, and the sutra was helping me this way. In the olden days, the sadhaks were traveling with their copy of Patanjali. It was usually handwritten in a book made of cloth. It was about this big, so they could have it on them. And they could pull it out, maybe just open the book somewhere, see what sutra you find, because there are some sutras, the first time you read it, they really speak to you. Some that, first time you read it, what does he mean? Or you feel like it doesn't concern you too much, but they appear, because each sutra, this is a scripture of a few words. Often what we read are the commentaries, but the bone of the scripture, it's like a Zen scripture, there is no fluff. It's very direct. Every word is important, and the placement of the sutra is also important. So when I first read, actually the first copy of Patanjali that I read was Swami Sham's, my Guruji's, and Swami Sham is a great, great jnani. And the path of jnana is the path of knowledge, and it is the path that is the least taken, because it's a path, it's an initiation, that path. Like, you can, anyone, like, look, I close my eyes, you close your eyes, you discover a space inside. You don't have any word for it, but this, anyone can just tap into it. But what is going to give them the information? Listen, what happened now is not ordinary. What happened now, I cannot describe it. But I went from uneasiness to complete peace. Like, can I reproduce that? Like, and yes, you can definitely reproduce it and you can practice it. So the Gyan is the path that will help us live our life, not only with a little more joy, but with a lot more wisdom. Why? Because, the mind does its things. It has a function. This function is to produce thoughts, to produce emotions also, to produce and a vision. And the vision of the mind are always an angle, which is why there's always been wars. Because, someone is touching the ears of the elephant. He's saying, well, the elephant is blind. He said the ears of the elephant are like, the elephant is like very thin and wide. And someone else is touching his leg and saying, no, his legs are very strong. So they're both right. But they're right in a very limited way. Like I always find with Patanjali, when I first read Swamiji's Patanjali, I could not put it down. I read it all. I understood very little. And, I didn't question my intelligence. But I just thought, well, I found something here that's going to take me a while to absorb. Why? It's because this scripture talks about something, I could call it something, talks about the witness self, talk about the knower. And the knower, the witness self, our true nature, cannot be apprehended by the intellect. We can talk about it with the intellect. But it's like... if we are cold and we have a picture of a fire and we try to warm up our hand by rubbing them in front of the picture of that fire, like to know that in theory, I'm a free being that's not born, that's not going to die, nice, but it doesn't make me free. So, when I teach Patanjali, I always say to people, look, if you're not considering meditating, do something else because you're going to waste your time. This scripture is incomprehensible if you don't meditate. It's a meditator's guide to what is called liberation, kevalya. Liberation from what? From a state which is the most common state on the planet Earth amongst human beings, which is a waking state. And Patanjali has discovered that this state is no doubt a fascinating state, but very incomplete. It is not fit to give us freedom. And the word freedom, the root of the word freedom is the word Priya, Sanskrit word Priya, which means that which is dearest. We actually feel bound in so many ways because inside there is a free being. So we know that freedom without knowing it. Hardly anyone talks about that. And often even when people talk about it, it is so conceptual, so theoretical. One of the things that I find happens in my class is that sometimes people transcend and they lose the thread of what I'm saying. And then they feel very sorry. And I tell them, no, don't feel sorry. You're just gone inside of you. There is nothing I can say to you that's more important than your direct experience of transcending. You were not sleeping. Something happened. When you come back, you totally refresh. And we can continue. You can listen to the recording. This morning I was in satsang, and for part of satsang I transcended. And I didn't lose anything in that moment where I transcended. So Patanjali is a scripture for initiate. It is, I don't know if you say that like that in English. It's an initiation into another frequency. All human beings have it. Our mind has two directions. It can be oriented towards form. When it's oriented towards form, I saw a beautiful flower. I want the beautiful flower. Now there is a gap between my joy and the moment I'll have the flower. And maybe even when I have the flower, I might still be disappointed. As a yogi, we study that inability that the mind has to stay stable. That's, again, a very, very important theme in Patanjali, what he calls sthiti, which is to stabilize. And actually, there are the way, like in yoga, we talk also a lot about Kundalini and Kundalini experiences. Now, the range of Kundalini experiences can vary, like maybe I close my eyes, I see a blue light, or I see something, or I have an experience of some kind. But actually, in the purest sense of the term, and Patanjali is a snake with 1,000 head. He's not a human being, He's the word Patanjali actually also means the answer to the prayer. And so, what is the awakening of the Kundalini? The Kundalini is the central nerve. It's not only the central nerves in our bodies, it's the central nerve of the universe. It's not going from under our feet to the top of our head, or from our pelvic floor to the tip of our head. It's a nerve that's covered by the other nerve of the nervous system, and pretty much everything we do involves using those external nerves. But the mind can also drop those external nerves, can disengage. And when it disengages, when we disengage from the two eyes, the first eye, or sometimes it's called the third, but it's actually the first, that eye, that inner vision can open, because the realizing I am, and when I talk about I am, I'm not talking about the body of someone who's going to die and was born. I'm talking about that existence that is forever. To have the experience of I am is not done with nerves. It's a nerveless experience. And that is the deepest aspect of the Kundalini unfoldment. Now, we will think, why would that be desirable? Why would it be desirable, for instance, to be thoughtless? It's because, in terms of thought, we describe it as thoughtless. But it's actually, at that time, we're not dividing anything. We are the whole. We are timeless. It is such an incredible dimension. And that's revealed in meditation. And Gyan it can come through words, but actually Gyan links us with those inner realizations. Why do we meet, for instance, an outer guru? And why does it resonate in us? It's because the same is open in us. And it is a knowledge, like many things, like, an apple is ripe and fall from the tree. You have to be ready for it. You have to be ripe. We cannot go around telling people, hey, stop meditating. It's not like that, Said you're wasting your life completely. You're missing it has to come from within. We can connect with people when they have questions, We're not preaching anything. It actually, how can we even pass on such a knowledge? How can we transmit knowledge? First of all, it has to be in us. It is in the other person, and we connect at the frequency of the being. Patanjali talks to the being, the eternal being, the only being, and awakens the Kundalini Shakti in the form of intelligence, in the form of discrimination, the ability to make choices that will be useful in our life. Like Patanjali, for those of you people who know it a little bit, at one point Patanjali described the way the mind works. And he says there are 5 types, he calls them vrittis, they are waves of perception. So then he says there is direct perception, direct knowledge, And there is incorrect knowledge, because that's part of the mind. We have to realize this thing can make mistakes. And then the mind can also imagine, creates an image of something. Then the mind can also hold on to an experience, either extremely pleasant or extremely unpleasant, in the form of memory. And the mind can have the experience of deep sleep, nidra. Now, Patanjali defines all those 5 types of vrittis. He says they can be klish or aklish. They can be useful, they can be actually detrimental or useful. Detrimental for what? To take you to who you are. You know, basically, the sage doesn't have a million things to tell us. He has one thing to tell us. You are that. Except he can tell us we don't know what that is when we are the you or the I. We have to drop that you so that the other you is revealed.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, Annie, sure.
So it's so beautiful. I'm totally like one of your students that's about to transcend. So I have to bring my question while I think of it. When you're speaking about the vrittis, which I love how clear you made it about the klesh or aklesh, that which is helpful, that which is detrimental, it made me think about the first, I think it's the first or second sutra, Yog Chit Vritti Nirodha, which... and then before how you said, that Patanjali is the meditator's guide to freedom, and it's the path of gyan and knowledge and knowing that knower self.
Yes.
So when we think about that sutra, which is also so famous and kind of misunderstood, can you just clarify? Because like how I was, say, taught it at my yoga teacher training versus how I was taught it from Swami Sham was very different.
Yes.
So just when we think of, because that's kind of laying out the purpose of following the guidebook, like sort of how Patanjali's laid it out. But is it to quiet the mind, or is it to transcend the mind, or where help us there, please.
It is all of that, It definitely quiet the mind, transcend the mind, become aware that the mind has been transcended, become aware that the mind is now engaged. Patanjali starts by the word atta. Atta yoga nushasanam. And atta means now. It's not the same hatha. Hatha yoga is a different word. But atta means now. And if you're a human being, you're like a circle, and you're divided in moments. When the moments touch the time, we have at the same time the moment in time and eternity. It's just eternity touching in different way. Now I'm a young girl. Now I'm an older lady. Now I'm having babies now, like all the field of experience, because as human beings, we have entered time. And our whole experience is past, present, future, past, present, future, past, present, future. So the moment itself, if we think about our life, I'm just asking anyone to ask that question to themselves. Have you been ever at another time than now? Never. You might in that now remember the past, or you might in that now anticipate the future. But now is not just a fragment. It's not just a sequence. This is where you understand, just from the very first word, is taking us somewhere else. And then this famous sutra, very famous sutra, for us anyway, because this is a sutra we study a lot, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. The word Nirod if it's not talked about by someone who knows the meditative space, the person's going to sit and think, I should not think. Well, good luck. It's like the ocean should not have waves, So if we begin to consider this is a question of control, number one, it's not going to work. And number two, we're going to make ourselves very miserable because we're not going to succeed. And we're going to think we should accomplish something like that. The word nirod, nir is negation, not. And road means the obstacle. So it's that, nirod is that which removes the obstacle. What's the obstacle? The obstacle is the movement, is the outer movement. A wave is a disturbance traveling in time and space. That's the scientific definition of a wave. Now, a wave of perception, it comes, it stays, it goes. But what nirod does, it's a very specific state of the mind where the mind is open in such a way that it blocks the thoughts. It's not something I do. It's not something that can be done. I cannot even lie down and sleep. Sleep comes. Samadhi comes. We just have to prepare the ground for it. So in the state of nirod, the vrittis, or the waves of perception, they simply cannot rise. They are not rising at that time. And we don't have to be afraid we haven't lost them. They're going to come back. But, at that time, they cannot rise. And because they don't rise, we perceive the lake. We perceive the still water of the lake of the mind, instead of perceiving all the movements of the mind. Which is why Patanjali then says, and at that time, tadatrashtu swarupya avastanam, you are at that time established in swarupe, swa, true, rup or rupe here, with the Sanskrit as different declination. And so you are established in your true nature. You don't want to move. There is nothing pulling you. Even the joyful things are not pulling you. And you're not asleep. What is actually happening, if I talk about it in terms of Kundalini, which is a wonderful satsang that I recently listened to, and I was so interested because it's not a topic that Swamiji often approach.
Yes, I remember that one too. It was so
You remember?
good.
Oh God, yes. So then, what happened is that because we're not engaging, something reveals itself. And so yoga is samadhi. This is what Vyas said. That was his commentary. Vyas is one of the most educated ones, often considered and respected commentary of Patanjali. But that's what he said, yoga is samadhi. Which is why this journey belongs to meditation. When we realize that perhaps we think that if we stop thinking we die or we feel terrible, and we discover that when we stop thinking, it's actually as if we open the door of our house, a room of our house that we had never gone into before, or that we were afraid of, or a space that no one is talking about. Because even, the notions of inner, outer, everything's so blurry. But in yoga's Chidvritti Nirodha, it means that yoga is revealed when the vrittis are not engaged.
That's such a beautiful analogy as the room when we think about accessing consciousness in that way, because it kind of takes the fear out of it. Like, okay, my mind can sort of accept that it's not to be afraid of. But when you speak about that yoga is samadhi, and I'm wondering if you can make the differentiation for us of how samadhi is different or the same as kevalya, because
Yes. Well, samadhi is a mini kevalya.
Okay.
It's an unstable kevalya. But, one thing we have to understand is that at the moment of samadhi, we are not in time. Absolutely not. That's not our reality. When we open our eyes and we have a sense of how much time has gone by. I'll give you an example. I had a friend I used to practice with yoga. And her husband loved to do yoga with us. But whenever we'll get ready to meditate, he'll take off. And because I'm a rascal, one day I saw and knowing he's very polite, I said, we're going to meditate before today. So he was trapped. So he meditated with us. And at the end of the meditation, I said, so how did it go? He said, the whole 15 minutes I kept hearing this mouse in the wall and drove me crazy. We were kind of semi-outdoor and an open space. I said, yeah, what time do you think it is? And so he looked at his watch. An hour had gone by. But he had an experience of 15 minutes of that hour. So I said, what happened to the other 45 minutes? At that time, you were not in time. And your cells were not in time. Our cells get refreshed, nourished, because they're not engaged also. We leave the survival game when we meditate. We're not busy hunting for food. We're not busy looking for a partner. We're not busy having any kind of plans. So something very deep is nourished. And what is fascinating, I was speaking with a friend today, because there's this song that says that, in meditation, as soon as you notice, because you don't always notice, like if you use a mantra, for instance, you're going to be repeating your mantra. My mantra is Maram Ham, which means I'm immortal, I'm blissful. Swami Sham's mantra. His whole teaching concentrated in those 4 words. So I'm repeating Amaram Ham, Madaram Ham, Maram Ham, Madaram Ham. I said, today I'm seeing Bobby. Amaram Ham, Madaram Ham, Maram Ham, Madaram Ham. I think I'll go there after. Amaram Ham, Madaram. So, things are happening in my consciousness, which is fine. But when I slide to my grocery list, or to a thought, or even to a delightful thought, or to an unpleasant thought, whatever, when I slide, I don't notice it. When I notice it, I can come back in the groove of mantra. This is when I practice choosing that. I take the mind away from its goodies at that time and say, look, dear mind, we'll do it, but later. Now it's our time to transcend, right? So there is an unbelievable strength that is developed through that. And it's far from control. But what happens, because you practice it in meditation, when you see, anything can trigger the mind. Anything. I phoned to a friend the other day, he lost my credit card. So how could you do that? But anyway, even that, we did whatever was to be done. But the mind wants to engage, thinking there's something wrong, thinking there's nothing going on. You can do the same thing to take care of the situation without being agitated. You can decide, you can choose not to be agitated. But you have to have practiced it. Otherwise, you're going to think, it'd be good if I was not agitated, but you are. And you cannot change it. So, when we meditate, we take a bath of immortality at that time, because we are out of time. So at the moment when we are out of time, you could say we are in kevalya. But what is happening actually is that experience of samadhi is disengaged from the world, disengaged, and it brings a lot of peace and a lot of well-being, but it is still a state of the mind. Kevalya is not a state of the mind. It's freedom from the mind. So what we practice is we practice the mind less and less involved, less and less, more and more subtle, into deeper and deeper state of consciousness to prepare ourselves. Because kevalya happens by itself. Just as samadhi happened by itself. Samadhi simply means even buddhi, even action. No, I mean, yeah, it's definitely, samadhi is built on concentration. Anytime we are able to concentrate on something, everything we like, we naturally concentrate it. But actually, when we concentrate it, we feel good because our energy is not scattered. It's a very important quality to develop. And then when that concentration is perfect, then if you're meditating, the mantra will repeat itself and you're not doing it. It just happens and it's not going anywhere. And then samadhi. And in samadhi, there's no more action to release the mind or to be free from the mind. So the way Patanjali explains it is that we will have a temporary experience of that. And we will get back to our waking state, like a bird who is used to go back to its branch because it's familiar to it. But our waking state is improving. Now, the path of yoga improves the mind, improves the body, improves the intelligence that allows us to live life in a beautiful way. But that's not the goal. That's the path. And it's a kind of byproduct of the practice, because the goal is to be at peace forever. And it is so rare to see that in a human being, that even to be in contact with a being that doesn't move from that, they become an idea. Someone is very sick, just found out very terrible disease. Another person find out very terrible disease. One is completely freaked out. The other one has already contemplated that the body changes, that they're not the body. So nobody likes the disease. But we have a completely different approach on things. Because actually even great joys can destabilize us if they are of a rajasic nature. There is a contraction that happens. And yoga is the opposite of that. And, all the practices, whether it's hatha yoga, whether it's pranayama, whether it's singing, studying, the scriptures are very useful because they help us, especially Patanjali. I'm a bit partial to Patanjali, of course, but what I love about Patanjali is that he is a guide. The teachings, like sometimes it's been said that Patanjali is a dualistic scripture. No, it's a scripture of a realized being who speaks to would-be realized being. So he's not ignoring their reality. He says, my dear one, you suffer. Okay, what can we do for that? Here are the solution. And when that happens, what do I do then? Okay, but how long is it going to take me, Guruji, to reach that state? All those unspoken questions are behind the text of Patanjali. And I mean, actually, Bobby, that we still have this text intact. How old is this text? It's been said it's about 25,000 years old, but it could be more. And it was probably an oral tradition before it became a written tradition. Maybe there was more than one author. But it's a great, great treasure because it really helps us. Like as I was saying before, we have millions of thoughts, millions of experiences. Patanjali gives us two categories. Okay, this works for my freedom, this stops my freedom. That's just that. And, and even something that worked for your freedom at one point might become something that's now not important. Like you could have gone beyond a technique or... Anyway, it's just... It is important to study the scripture with someone who has a grasp and a practice of what is meant in that. Otherwise, you get into intellectual, it can be very complex, and there can be some form of joy into that, if you have an abstract mind. But what we want is peace. That's basically what kevalya is.
Yeah. I love hearing you express how obviously you've practiced the practice of also studying this scripture. And when we think about, as modern yoga practitioners, as yogis or meditators living in this world with all the responsibilities, like you said, are facing illness and family life and householder life. So we have this guidebook. Is it the scripture? Like, obviously it's so valuable to study it with somebody that knows it and can understand Sanskrit and all those deep layers. But as a kind of living scripture, is it one that we must go sort of linearly, or like, you expressed so beautifully that sutra that spoke to you. You said it was from the first pad, I think verse 22. I'm definitely going to look it up. But is it something that we can also call on and sort of refer to here? Like, what I'm saying? Like, kind of touch in and tap into it without sort of following the step by step of the guidebook.
When you close your eyes and the thoughts somehow subside, whatever you use technique or not, or you go there, that's the essence of what Patanjali expresses. That's the most important practice. That's immediate. It's not a process. Swamiji will never let us use this word process. If you use that word process, you are taking a big chance, because it will not, because for him, for the realized being, the self is the self. There is nothing to reach to. But what I love personally of this book is the compassion, the wisdom of the author. Because the author, for instance, says, you're going to meet obstacle. You can, so how are you going to overcome those obstacles? And that's one very interesting point, actually, in the first part, where he's describing, he's not saying you do this when you're lazy, or you do this when you're frustrated, or you do this when you cannot reach the state you want, or you do this when he said, no, you just go back to yourself. So Patanjali is a scripture that is gradual. And at the same time, like when he says Yoga Chidritine Road, like he said everything. But now, then we have questions, and our questions are our lives. Like I would say to Swamiji, yes, Swamiji, I know I'm immortal, but I'm afraid of dying, That's kind of that. Because I don't know. I know it here. I might accept it even to a certain point. But as long as I don't have that experience established in me, I cannot get rid of it. So it can be, what? I think it's a book worthwhile opening anywhere, reading anything, seeing where your interest takes you. I have a very active mind. So for me, this scripture's perfect. It gave me so much to chew up that I never get tired of it. And it's also, like in everyday life. Couldn't find my keys this morning, for instance, and you watch the nervous system engage. It's time to go to satsang. I need to find my keys now, right? There is this sense. I said, okay, don't get agitated. Don't. It is not a good reason to suffer. And you don't have the power to drop that if you're not a meditator. I didn't have that power before. You can analyze, it would be better for me, whatever. But because you actually have that in you already, you've sat so many times that you know that place. And you know that story of keys. It's just lost into the thread of time and of other happening. But it's a really good question, Bobby, to study it. Like I usually, when I've been teaching Patanjali, sometimes I've taught a few sutras. Let's say I've done a weekend and on a certain topic, like, the topic of pain in Patanjali, or the topic of attachment in Patanjali, or the topic of time. You can look at it like that. If you study the book, it's unbelievable how much you can learn. Like there is a reason why I have continued to study it, because it gives me answers in my daily life, and especially guides me in my meditation. One of the things that Patanjali helped me understand is there's a million, zillion, so many things going on. There is only one thing that I need to develop. Who is watching all of that? In meditation, I can watch my mind. It's not my mind watching my mind. And as Swamiji was saying, you think your mind is watching the space, as it's the space that's watching the mind. And like how thoughtless how thoughtless awareness could be the goal of life, Like if you said to someone that's not au courant of all this, you said, thoughtless awareness is the goal of, so well, maybe for you, not for me, but because in thoughtless awareness, we have awareness without limitation. Which is why in the third pad, as this being practiced, certain happenings are taking place as a yogi, where you have experiences that your previous state of consciousness didn't allow you to have. We break through something. Like we can get to know things that we should not know. We cannot know through the normal channel. This explains the whole path of shamanism, for instance, or mediums, or provided they are authentic. But why is that happening? It's because when we enter the subtlety of our being, every time we go one step subtler, there is less division. The chit starts, and then there's ahankar, the ego, and the 5 tanmatras that are the precursor of the matter and the senses that perceive matter. But when you, on the level of the tanmatras, this is what happened to people when they have near-death experience. All of a sudden they can hear behind the door. There's this very, very famous story of a man in France who shot himself during an army practice. And he was taken to the hospital, and he saw so many things while he was half dead, transported in the ambulance. He saw that there was a bicycle shop right next to the hospital. He saw there was a pair of shoes on the roof of the hospital. He saw his doctor with his wife watching a movie and people getting the doctor out. The wife pacing, he saw all these things. And he even, when he saw the whole surgery, and when he came back to himself, he was in his room and he thought, am I gone crazy? And he waited till he could walk to the window to double check the bicycle store was there. So when he was able to double check, then he talked to the doctor. And he told him, I saw you were watching this and this movie, and the doctor's pixels are not registering what he's saying. There is no room in a normal human consciousness to do that. I cannot perceive that. Why should you? Well, because I was half dead. I was not so constricted to my body. So then at the end, he said, I saw what's written under the table where you perform my surgery. Then the doctor said, let's go check it. And he knew what was written there because he saw it while he was more spirit than body. So that's the field of the tanmatras. In meditation, we open that up. So powers can open up. And power of intention can be stronger. But that's not the goal. Mm-hmm. That's a very important thing. The only important thing is peace. That's the only important thing.
Beautiful.
Nothing.
Beautiful. I think that's a real high to wrap up on deep. It's so much inspiration for myself, and I know all the listeners, especially you have a small community. We meet for satsang once a month, and I know we'll be excited to dig into Patanjali now. And
awesome.
I always like to finish the talk with 3 quick questions. So you just give a 1 sentence answer. And the first question is, or not a question, but an ask of 1 great line or great Mahavakya that you've kept with you your whole sadhana.
The space has no center. The center is the space.
Beautiful. It's kind of like the other one you said about watching the space. I love that. Yeah. And at this point in your life, in your practice, is there anything you're still curious about?
Yes. I'm still very inspired in facilitating this unfoldment.
Beautiful.
I'm on the way.
Yeah, I would say you're well on your way. Like, I say this so often when I do these conversations. Like, I know sadhana is not linear, but like, it's such a joy to spend time with beings like you who are so far along on the path and have devoted your life to this. It gives me such inspiration to keep on the trajectory and keep going towards that goal, like you said. So I just appreciate that. And the final request or question, if you had to sum up this short conversation in 1 line, how would you sum it up?
The only important thing is peace, and peace is what we are.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Deep. Really wonderful.
It was wonderful to spend that moment with you.
Super, super wonderful. And I know if ever you have any workshops or courses or meetings online about sign me up. So keep me posted, and I'm sure people will reach out asking if you're teaching any courses. So I'll definitely keep them updated as well. So thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and your sweetness. So thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. You're an angel. You are so beautiful. Thank you. It was lovely to spend that time with you.
Nirvichar Vaisharadiye Adhyatma Prasadaha Ritambhara Tatra Pragya Shrudanuman Pragya Bhiyam Anya Vishaya Visheshartatvat Tadjaha Sanskaru Anya Sanskar Pratibandhi Tasyapi Nirodhe Sarvanirodham Nirbijah Samadhihi Iti Shri Patanjali Yog Shastre Samadhi Pada Samapataha.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider supporting the show at patreon.com/acuriousYogiPodcast. And please leave a review. It really helps the show reach more people. Let's stay curious, connected, and keep walking the path together. In total delight, this is Bobby signing off until next time.